Uruguay is a country famous for football soccer. The first World Cup was won and organized by them. It is also known for its organic meat production and for being a pioneer nation in progressive politics. Among this, it was the first in the region to declare the right to water as a human right and yet, in July 2023, we received this kind of images from Montevideo.
Sabemos justamente que en Uruguay se está viviendo una crisis con respecto al agua potable, mientras que el país se enfrenta a su peor sequía en 70 años.
Ya cuando te cepillas los dientes es horrible. Se siente el agua salada, es asquerosa.
This, in any case, is very weird, not only because of the constitutional declaration, nor because countries cannot go into a drought.
Ciudad del Cabo se queda sin agua.
A 100 kilómetros de Sao Paulo, son patentes las evidencias de la peor sequía que el Estado ha experimentado en los últimos 80 años.
La intensa sequía también afecta a miles de cultivos agrícolas. En Lorica, por ejemplo, se han perdido más de 15.000 hectáreas de plátano.
But because another less famous but well-known thing about Uruguay is that water abounds.
Lo irónico del contexto es que Uruguay se asienta sobre el acuífero guaraní, una de las mayores reservas de aguas subterráneas del mundo.
And if Uruguay is a country built on water, then how did they get into this situation?
De la canilla sale agua. Sale un agua que es mucho más salada que lo que salud pública reconocería en situaciones normales, buena para la salud. Sale agua que los pacientes renales o los pacientes que tenemos hipertensión no podemos consumir, que sirve de pronto para lavar los platos, para el baño, para lavar un piso, pero no te sirve para hacer la comida.
This is a story where political egos and economic interests come into play, and where consequently half of a population is without water. If we look at the map of Uruguay, we see that it's bordered by a river that is nothing more and nothing less than the Río de la Plata, a water body that combines the waters of the Paraná River and the homonymous Uruguay. And also, if we look here, the country is completely divided in two by the Río Negro and this huge body of water called Lago Rincón del Bonete. But that's not all. If we get closer, we see that each of these lines are rivers, and if we took an even closer look to this river, we can see that it's massive. You can easily see that this is an important river, and it ends here, just outside of Montevideo, where 1.3 million people live in a country of 3 million plus. In summary, half of the population of the entire country lives in this area. So, if you have such a concentrated population and water throughout all the national territory, how do you manage to run out of water? Well, the first answer is, it stops raining. But this is not just a little less rain situation. This is the entire southern part of the continent decreasing exponentially in rains for the last 3 years.
El tema llegó a mayores cuando empezó a tener que ponerse, que tomarse agua de las nacientes, de donde vierte el río Santa Lucía, que es el río de la Plata, que es agua de un estuario y aguas, por lo tanto agua que está mezclada con el agua del mar y es salada.
Not only that, but the most important river for 3 other countries, all bordering Uruguay, Brazil, Uruguay and Argentina, the Paraná River that we already mentioned and which flows into the Río de la Plata, has historically reduced its flow repeatedly in the last years, and yet it seems that climate change, at least this time, is not the main cause.
According to what the expert has said and the analysis that we had access to, no. This was not climate change derived, but it did get worse due to an effect of climate change, which is the temperature rise. Added to the drought and the lack of rain, the temperature increase meant many things. Meant that people used more water and also its quicker evaporation. So adding rising temperatures to the drought made their water reservoirs reach their minimum. And obviously that prevented water from reaching Montevideo and Canelones, which were the affected areas.
So, it stopped raining, but climate change is not the cause. Let's check this out. Uruguay is a country full of water and empty of people. Where did all the water go? Uruguay has a distribution of intensive land use in livestock. It is so much that there are 4 cows for each citizen. To put it on scale, in Colombia, the data is half cow per person. In United States, it is 0.2 cows. And not even the largest producer of productive cows in the world, Brazil, reaches this rate, having 219 million cows for 216.4 million inhabitants. So, Uruguay is internationally recognized for exporting bovine products, mainly beef. All this production represents approximately 35% of its exportations. 50% of foreign trade is related to paper and 40% to vegetables and cereals, particularly soybeans and rice. So far as fourth is the first place for a highly technical sector such as pharmaceuticals and chemistry. But then, leathers, food, rubber, textiles and wood appear next on the list, and even if the companies of these sectors succeed in use not so much water, their production can easily alter and contaminate water sources.
The productive processes that take place in Uruguayan territory requires lots of water.
El impacto medioambiental es el que más preocupa a organizaciones de la sociedad civil respecto a la planta de celulosa de UPM, cómo se tratarán dichos efluentes, de qué manera llegarán al río Negro, puede verse comprometido este vital curso de agua.
Uruguayan also have an agreement made with a Finnish company. Well, there are letters that you can find easily online from organization charts of Finland and Uruguay, openly opposing to this agreement, saying that this is not a fair agreement in environmental terms, given that to produce cellulose, huge amounts of water are required.
UPM2. Para producir celulosa consume 136 millones de litros de agua del río Negro por día y vierte 107 millones de litros de agua contaminada al mismo río, que luego desemboca en el río Uruguay, ya afectado por las otras pasteras, UPM1 y Montes del Plata, para luego finalizar en las aguas del río de la Plata. ¿Y para los uruguayos, qué agua nos queda?
Someone mentioned at some point that in a year this plant used the water of 44 million people, for example, and it is fresh water.
Pero además el río Santa Lucía, que es, tiene una cuenca bastante importante al sur del país, tiene varios atropellos a su buena salud, digamos. Son por un lado que las areneras cargan arena de las orillas del río Santa Lucía para construcción, sin permisos, en la noche, y han sido detectadas también por el intendente del departamento de Canelones a través de drones, y se denuncia, pero no hay ninguna sanción más que económica y por lo tanto eso se vuelve a repetir.
In other areas of Uruguay, the soy and the rice are extensively produced, and we all know that this kind of crops requires large amounts of water. Add the livestock to this equation, Uruguay is one of the most famous countries for beef production. And all these activities, all these economical activities requires lots of water. The country has always been considered itself with its water wealth, as it is, so it was hard for them to anticipate this situation. The river from these conditions, well, this was going to happen.
So, the rain stops from falling for years. Production takes the remaining water, and since Uruguay usually has a lot of it, people do not expect anything strange. The problem is that one more element is still missing in this picture.
Cuando dejaron elaborado el proyecto para hacer una nueva represa y proteger las fuentes de agua para la ciudad de Montevideo y para el departamento de Montevideo y el departamento de Canelones, el gobierno que la recibió, el gobierno de derecha del presidente Lacalle Pou, actual presidente, dejó eso en stand-by y no le dio importancia. Hace entonces 4 años que podíamos tener una represa y que el agua no se hubiese fumado como se fumó tan rápidamente por la falta de esto.
Bueno, ese tema está en evaluación, se tiene que resolver en pocos días.
The truth is that Uruguay has a particular political situation that seems to have contributed in the same percentage meat does to exports, but in this case to the crisis.
Tendríamos que haber arrancado antes, nos dormimos.
¿En este gobierno o...?
No, nos dormimos. Se me van a enojar, nos dormimos todos.
On the one hand, a series of governments that fail to execute their policies.
Compartamos la responsabilidad, es mi manera de pensar.
And on the other, the return of a political current that seems to prioritize business against the well-being of its population.
Yo quería preguntar acerca de si hay alguna autocrítica en la reacción, si este escenario se podía haber previsto con anticipación, y bueno, y de qué inversión estamos hablando, sobre todo respecto a esta última obra. Gracias.
¿Inversión en dinero? Sobre lo segundo, y no lo tomen al pie de la letra, en el entorno de los $20 millones. La inversión en la obra.
El gobierno lo que hizo fue, después de 3 meses, de 6 meses de sequía, sacarle el IVA, o sea, sacarle un impuesto al agua para que la gente la comprara más barata. Pero no ha rebajado un peso el agua que provee de las canillas, que es agua no potable.
Although some health authorities said it was. Still, given the risk, alerts were activated, so people with hypertension or kidney problems didn't drink this water, but instead take that from bottles.
En el caso mío, en la familia, tenemos una niña que está teniendo que usar cremas especiales porque hay zonas de su cuerpo que se le han erosionado por el uso del agua salada y con demasiado cloro para la ducha.
An inequality that has been generated is that those who cannot buy a bottled water because it is expensive, well, they have to drink the water that is not necessarily drinkable. So at the start of the crisis, there was this question about stop charging water for the people because it is an expensive service there. Why people were not supplied as a first measure? The state take care of it, but very late and, in our opinion, with too little. And the people at the start of the crisis felt that this minimum, that was the thing you will expect, didn't happen. Only the VAT was removed, and with that, it was enough for a time, so that people could buy water a little cheaper. Many people did not have enough to buy the water constantly. That was not fair, so eventually the government started to give the equivalent to 2 liters, half a gallon, per person in some families.
Durante los años de pandemia, el mundo se paralizó, pero Uruguay no. En Uruguay se le dijo a la gente que tenía que hacer una conducta responsable y que cada uno decidía lo que quería hacer y lo que podía hacer. Por lo tanto, a nadie se lo encerró y a nadie se le prohibió trabajar. Pero este gobierno se excusa en la pandemia para decir que no pudo llevar adelante esta represa sobre el río Santa Lucía. ¿No es así?
Quería en términos generales, en cuanto a la crisis que está atravesando el país, si se podía haber previsto medidas con anticipación.
No, eso te lo contesté al principio. Ahora te contesto sobre el segundo, que es el tema de la inversión, del dinero que se va a gastar. ¿Así lo entendí yo la pregunta, no? ¿O no?
Perfectamente se podría haber hecho. 2020, 2021 y 2022. Y lo que va de 2023 ya tendría que estar hecha la represa porque es una obra que les lleva unos meses. Entonces, ahora están trayendo por cañerías de plástico, plastiducto, agua del río San José. Es un gasto enorme al santo botón porque el río San José se alimenta de las mismas fuentes pluviales que el río Santa Lucía y si no llovió, no llovió.
Estábamos hablando recién de por qué se hace esta obra ahora. El río San José hasta hace poco tiempo no estaba disponible para extraer agua. De hecho, había problemas en el río San José, por eso que se puede hacer esta obra en este momento.
Casupá es la misma cuenca de Santa Lucía. No quiere decir tampoco que se postergue el proyecto o que se abandone el proyecto de Casupá. Necesitamos una fuente alternativa. Eso nos plantea este proyecto, que es la toma del Río de la Plata, una fuente alternativa que además va a generar una mejora ambiental en el propio río Santa Lucía, al bajar la presión que tiene hoy para extraer agua para Montevideo.
At the Hospital de Clínicas, a medical institution that, for the people who don't know, can understand a little better, this style of hospital, it is a high-level hospital where complex procedures like dialysis and that kind of things are done. This hospital was built in the 30s and it was built over a water well and with access to that underground water. It was very good news that they did that because while the drought was happening, this is what allowed the hospital to keep working normally. And in the media, for the peace of the citizens, they were able to say that they have water guarantee for all processes, for hand washing and all that is required for doctors' hygiene. And so that calms down a bit all the fear of the people because healthcare is always a critical issue. And in this case, a critical issue that was solved just by this coincidence that they have done this work in the 30s with access to the underground water.
Montevideo tiene pozos de agua. Algunos son de agua potable y otros son de agua usable para otros usos. Y esos pozos la intendencia los reactivó.
Because the mayor's decision to open some of the wells for the use of the population, this generates some level of conflict with the national government. Apparently, the mayors of Montevideo asked some foreign countries for help. They answered the call, but they did that to the national government. And the national government answered them something like, no, we don't need help. That is what the Uruguayans we spoke to told us. So it seems that there was rather a political bias in the decision making, and then these two territories that have a political current a little different from the national one, well, they happen to be the affected territories, and this makes all the situation a little bit more complex.
En algunos casos el agua se está usando para llevar a instituciones como agua bebible y en otros casos se está usando para, por ejemplo, los bomberos o para el caso de surtir agua para la limpieza en hospitales y sanatorios. O sea que el subsuelo de Montevideo tiene agua y tiene agua viable. Pero estos señores quieren construir una planta potabilizadora de agua en el Río de la Plata. Y esa es la intención y por eso no construyeron la represa en el río Santa Lucía. Lo que quieren es hacer un proyecto que se llama Neptuno, que sale millones de dólares y que proveería de agua salada y muchas veces con cianobacterias a Montevideo.
About the Neptuno project, we can make a whole video. And indeed, for this case of drought in Uruguay, there are too many edges to cover. In fact, this video is a part of a larger investigation that we are doing for another video that deals with droughts and cities. But in order to continue producing these videos, we are looking for support. In the description, you can find a link to the Patreon we are launching, which is from the studio where all this is edited. All the designs, all the animation, all the audio, everything. You can access at the link in the description and click in the option Ciudadano Climático, that means climate citizen. It directly supports the production of this type of content for Green Anthropocene. This production is very important to us, especially right now, because we are launching a series of long-term products and projects, including this series of videos, where we hope to explore issues such as sustainability, health, management, citizenship, and bring them to you with increasing quality each time. So if you can and it doesn't hurt your pocket, we have this option for you. And without any other interruption, we continue.
The 4 latest months of 2022 were critical, and that derived that in October of 2022 the agriculture emergency was decreed. This allowed, let's say, to guarantee that the production of that period had the necessary water. But as the drought continued, in February for the two cities, Montevideo and Canelones, they published a resolution to prioritize the water use. Already in March of 2023, when the resolution was active and the privatization was happening, the protest began. The feeling that we have while doing this research, from people's opinion and readings from public documents or articles from multiple perspectives, or listening to young people talk about this or to friends from there, was that some part of the population felt betrayed by the current government.
Si no llueve, va a haber un lapso en el cual el agua no sea bebible.
Like the dad in the past who comes home and he does not tell the family that he lost his job, and that at home they can no longer buy groceries, they can't buy anything, and he just say, it's just that I've been out of work so long. Why didn't they tell us before? Why it was not foreseen? Why did they treat us like that? In Cape Town, South Africa, when the crisis began, the mayoress of Cape Town announced an alert. They were above 20% of capacity still at that moment, when she announced the alert. She said, okay, we have 7 or 8 months, something like that, for the 0 hour to come. But not only that, the alert also includes the message, it's up to us. So the administration negotiates with companies, industries and agriculture, with all the players to regulate and lower consumption in its production processes. And Cape Town decides that all the water left should be prioritized for human and living use. By changing practices in a range from the individual, not because they are to blame in this situation, but because the only way to stop a crisis like this is that each one did their part. The idea is that collectively that will have an impact. So when the 0 hour arrives, they didn't consume all the water left. They did it! Woo! In other words, it was possible to curb consumption significantly, while simultaneously they fixed all pipes where there were leaks. It was something very joint, very clear, and the orientation was on time, with enough guidelines that allowed the people to understand how collectively they were going to resist and eventually overcome that situation. Uruguay eventually overcame this crisis, but we are not sure if the different players, citizens, government, companies, if they learn the lessons that there are to learn in this kind of situations. Right now, while doing this video, we are looking how cities around the world are being left out without water, at the same time that water sources are depleted and polluted.
The case of Uruguay is significant because it surprises not only the Uruguayans themselves, but also the world. The international press talks about it, and many experts agree that this problem is only the symptom of a long-term disease, a problem we are not paying enough attention. And all this shows that we are anesthetized. Each day there is something different, another drought, another heat wave, and each one of us feel that there is little to do. Some people bet on technological solutions, others on administrative ones, but others bet on doing business with the need.
A nosotros nos han mantenido en un error, nos han dicho que somos un país pobre, una sociedad pobre, y eso es una falsedad. Nosotros somos un país rico, porque estamos parados y rodeados por uno de los recursos más valiosos en esta etapa del mundo, que es el agua.
If you want to know more about what cities do when the drought arrives, click on this video here, and in the meantime, like, subscribe and get to know more about some initiative that we are leaving you in the description. Greetings and strength to the people of Uruguay.